ተመልካቾቻችን እንደምን ሰንብታችኋል? እንግዲህ ዛሬ የሄለን ሾው 21ኛው ሲዝን የምንከፍትበት ፕሮግራማችን ይሆናል። ትንሽ ለየት ያለ ፕሮግራም ይዘንላችሁ የቀረብነው እንግዲህ እዚህ ዋሽንግተን ዲሲ ውስጥ በኦገስት 14 በየአመቱ የሚቀርበው Empower the Community Weekend የሚባለው ዝግጅት ላይ ቀርበው የነበሩትን ፓነል ዲስከሽኖች ዛሬ እንደዚሁም ደግሞ በሚቀጥሉት 2 ሳምንታት ከፋፍለን ለእናንተ የምናቀርብበት ዝግጅት ይሆናል። እንግዲህ ይሄ ዝግጅት እዚህ አሜሪካን ሀገር ነው የሚካሄደው። ኢትዮጵያውያኖች እንደዚሁም ኤርትራውያን አሜሪካኖች የሚሳተፉበት ዝግጅት ነው። ስለዚህ ዝግጅቱ በሙሉ የሚደረገው በእንግሊዝኛ ነው። እንግዲህ ብዙ ወጣቶችን ለማሳተፍ በማሰብ ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ ከወዲሁ ይቅርታ እየጠየቅን ግን ፕሮግራማችንን እንደምትከታተሉ ብዙ እውቀት እንደምታገኙበት በመተማመን ነው ይዘንላችሁ የቀረብነው። እንግዲህ የዛሬው ዝግጅት Civic Engagement የሚባለውን ፓነል ነው ይዘንላችሁ የቀረብነው። ይሄ እንግዲህ 3 እንግዶች በዚህ ዝግጅት ላይ ቀርበዋል። ሳምራ ብሩክ በኒውዮርክ ሲቲ ውስጥ ስቴት ሴኔተር ናት። ኦባላ ሚኒሶታ የሚባለው ስቴት ውስጥ ኦስትን የምትባለው ከተማ ውስጥ ሲቲ ካውንስል ሜምበር ሆኖ የተመረጠ ነው። ሶስተኛ እንግዳዋ ደግሞ ጠበቃ ዊንታ ወልደ ማርያም እንግዲህ እሷ ደግሞ አሲስታንት አተርኒ ጀነራል በዩኤስ ዲፓርትመንት ኦፍ ጀስቲስ እዚህ ሀገር በጠበቃነት የምትሰራ እህታችን ናት። እንግዲህ ከነሱ ጋር ያደረግነው ቆይታ ነው ይዘንላችሁ የምንቀርበው። እንግዲህ በኮቪድ ወረርሽኝ ምክንያት ሌላ ጊዜ እንደምናደርገው ሰፋ ባለ መልኩ ትልቅ ኤግዚቢሽን ሆል ውስጥ አይደለም ይሄ ዝግጅት የሚደረገው ያለው። ለመጠንቀቅ ብለን በኮቪድ ምክንያት ፕሮግራሟን ጠበብ አድርገናት ነበር። አነስ ያለ ሰው ነው ፊት ለፊት የነበረው፣ ግን በአብዛኛው እድምተኞቻችን ቨርቹዋሊ ነው የተሳተፉበት ይሄን ፕሮግራም። እስቲ ወደዚህ ቆይታ ልወሰዳችሁ፣ ተከታተሉ። Welcome. I'm thrilled that all of you are here today. Let me tell you, the main reason why I do this particular event, and we call it Empower the Community Weekend, is exactly for the same reason that 3 of you are sitting here. I wanted to make sure we always say, here in the Washington, D.C. metro area, there are over 350,000 Ethiopian Americans, maybe even more, and Eritrean Americans. And for me, numbers mean nothing unless we are organized, unless we think collectively, support collectively each other. And when there are people like you who run for office like Samra and Obala, we are here to support you, to campaign for you, raise money for you, because not only because you represent us and you are from us, because you understand our interest. We're immigrants, we're hardworking immigrants, all of us in this country. We all come here for a better life, but that better life also needs to be represented for our children. And the values that we want and needs to be represented at the highest office of the land. They need to know who we are when we say we're Ethiopian Americans, right? When we say we're Eritrean Americans, they need to know who we are, not just because we go out there and march on the streets, but because we know how the political system works in this country, and we take advantage of this to advance the issues that we care about. So that's why this whole event got started, is actually for this purpose. I've always felt like we need to mobilize, we need to get together, we need to network, we need to do business with each other, we need to support each other, and events like this, I'm hoping, gets us together and get us talking to each other. And so that's why I'm super excited that you all are here. Hannah has made an introduction, so we're going to go right down to our discussion. Before we get started, though, I know we have a little bit of your background, so I'd love to read that so people can be even more familiar with who you are. So I'm going to start with Obala. Obala was born in Gambella, Ethiopia, and grew up in a Kenyan refugee camp. He moved to America in December 2013, searching for a better education and a better life. Obala graduated with a bachelor's degree in social work from College of St. Scholastia. Did I say it right? An associate degree in human services from Riverland Community College. As a student leader at Riverland Community College, Obala led an effort to open the first food pantry to support students at Riverland College, work that became a model for other community colleges across the state. He continued his effort when he was elected the president of LEAD MN, a statewide student association representing 180,000 community college students in Minnesota in 2019. The act has been a success at motivating colleges to take serious steps in addressing these issues, with 20 colleges being designated hunger-free this spring. Obala have been recognized as a positive change agent in Austin community by bringing young and old people together. He brought about change as the first refugee and person of color to ever sit on the Austin City Council in November 2020. Congratulations. Governor Walz recognized Obala's leadership, and he appointed him a 2-year term on Minnesota State Board of Trustees, which oversees all 38 state colleges and 7 universities. In 2020, Obala was awarded a Minnesota Department of Human Services as an Outstanding Refugee Young Leader Award. Congratulations. Samra. Samra is no stranger to serving her community. Senator Samra Baruch was elected to represent the good people of New York's 55th Senate District in November 2020. Senator Baruch is a chair of the Senate Committee of Mental Health and has made improving access to life-saving resources a legislative priority. To that end, she proactively finds opportunities to address the intersection of mental health with topics like education, substance abuse, criminal justice, and healthcare. In addition to her work in the New York State Senate, Samra is a proud alumni of the United States Peace Corps. Good for you. Having spent 2 years as a health educator in rural Guatemala. Following her return to the United States, Brooke worked in a nonprofit sector focused on organizations that protect the environment, help seniors age in place, and address education inequities. Brooke lives in Rochester Park Avenue neighborhood with her husband, Brian, who's also here taking pictures. Welcome, Senator. All right, so Winta Waldemariam has over a decade of federal government experience spanning the White House, U.S. Senate, U.S. House of Leadership, and Department of Justice. Currently, her brand new job, can we say that, she accepted a position as Deputy Assistant Attorney General for U.S. Department of Justice. Congratulations. Yes. So Winta most recently served as Policy Director to James E. Clyburn, U.S. House Majority Whip and Chairman of the Select Subcommittee on Coronavirus Crisis. She previously served in the administration of President Barack Obama, most recently as Ethics Counsel in the Office of White House Counsel. Prior to her role in the Executive Office of the President, Winta served as the attorney in the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Legislative Affairs. Prior to her roles in the executive branch, she served as a counsel to Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio and Senator Kristen Gillibrand of New York. She began her career in Washington in the office of Representative Hank Johnson. So she lives here in Washington, D.C., right? Welcome, Winta. So as you can see, very wide experience, very different backgrounds, but all in government and public service. Let's talk about the political times that we are here in the U.S. Obviously, we have a new administration. The last administration, I would say, probably was not as friendly to the immigrant community, and it was a very toxic, very difficult 4 years that we've passed. But I want to ask you, given all the background that we have in this country, as immigrants, what is your reflection right now, given the current administration that we're in right now, how the transition is working, and where you see us as immigrants being represented? Maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, thank you, Helen, for having us here and for organizing this great weekend. I wish growing up in this country I had had exposure to things like this. Because I think it would be very empowering and make you feel a lot less by yourself.
Of course.
To your point about supporting when we see other Eritreans and Ethiopians who are excelling in the field. When I saw Samra's poster last year for the first time online, first of all, I didn't see her name. I just called my mom. I said, did you know Eden, my cousin, is running for Congress? And she was just like my cousin. And just to show you how excited we are, just even when we see a visual picture of somebody who looks like us in spaces that we are not. As we all know, the last presidential administration was extremely antagonistic to people from immigrant background.
That's true.
The last administration started, the way that President Trump kind of entered the political space was by questioning the legitimacy of Barack Obama, an East African, if he's even American. Yeah. And he continued on that platform. So I think a lot of us have like PTSD for the last 4 years of being made to feel like we don't belong and being scared to a point where we're encouraged discouraged from using our voices. And so what I would say is, in particular for our community, I'm very encouraged. When President Biden was elected, I don't know if you guys saw, but the person who was in charge of his entire transition his name is Johannes Abraham.
Yeah.
So that tells you everything you need to know about whether our values are going to be at the table. And, you know, I think that there, and the vice president of this country, right? The second black person to be either the president or the vice president is the daughter of immigrants.
Yeah.
And so I think that shows that the experience that many people in our community have is going to, maybe not specifically, you know, Eritrean Ethiopian experience, but I think the experience of immigrants is going to be an experience that's at the table, that's included in the decision making. And I think that's very powerful. It's not perfect, but it gives me reassurance that I'm in the room.
Right.
I recently joined the administration from Congress, and I saw a Congress member who we have almost the same profile, except now my mom is like, well, can't you go run for Congress? Now there's a Habesha congressman. But, you know, Joe Nagus is a Congress member. He's, I think, 36 years old, the son of Eritrean refugees. And his story, I think, is really important because it shows a couple of things. One, it shows sometimes we have to invite ourselves to the table, invite ourselves to the room when we're not being sent an invitation. But then also I think, you know, when we talk about in this country, when we talk about the story of immigration, it often has, people only think of it through one lens, through one perspective. And I remember being, as a policy staffer, being told, oh, well, we're not going to have you work on immigration because you don't come from this particular ethnic background. And I'm like, hello, my name is Wintal Mariam. How, like, that ain't from here. And so seeing somebody like Congressman Nagus, for example, being invited to be the one who speaks on the House floor about immigration, about the DREAM Act, says, hey, look, we are here. We are going to be recognized, we're going to be acknowledged, and our story is going to be included when you're making policy decisions. You're not going to exclude us from the narrative and make decisions about immigration, for example, or about other things that impact, things that impact immigrants and not include us at the table.
That's true.
And so I am encouraged, but I know that even when we are invited to the table, you still have to push your way to the conversation to make sure that your perspective is included.
Yeah, that's great. Samra, add to it your own experience in running for office. Give us your background also when you answer this question. How do you see the political environment in this country, and then your election and how you run an office? If you can just answer that given that background.
Definitely. And again, thank you. This is such, this really is a moment that many of us never dreamt of having, to just have so many people with a shared experience and identity and be in these amazing places of power and influence. It's really, it kind of gives you chills. And I really think so much of what was just said is also true for my experience. And the thing I'll pull out that really has to do with my background and kind of how I got here is this idea of no invitation to the room. Not only are you not invited sometimes, you don't know where the room is. you don't know who's in that room making decisions. And, you know, we had wild success in our campaign, and I was so proud of what we built in the middle of a pandemic, a full grassroots campaign that came out of nowhere. But, you know, once you get into the seat and you're doing all these wonderful things for the past 8 months, it's easy for people to forget that a mere 18 months ago, people were shutting doors when I was trying to open them. And that, you know, forces you to rely on what you have. And one of the first meetings I had was with our local Ethiopian community. And my father, actually, when we were younger, really kind of started this community in Rochester, New York. But, you know, as you get older and you move on to college and you sometimes lose touch. But the thing that is just so remarkable is that when you've got strong ties like that, it was like a snap and we were all back together, right? Just like you said, you thought you saw your cousin running for office and you were excited. We're all each other's cousins, you know, and we're family. And so my toolkit, you know, may have looked different than someone who was stepping into a legacy of running for office, whose parents had run for office and who had been kind of donned as the next generation. But I got to use what I had, and what I had was much more community driven. And, you know, even when you talked about some of my background, that's not a traditional professional background for someone running for office. To be honest, I didn't even think of doing internships in college because I was too busy working 3 jobs to pay for college. So I never got to go to Capitol Hill and have a cool internship and, dip my toe in the water of politics. Instead, I did a lot of service through nonprofits and really trying to find my way. But what that allowed me to do is see up close a lot of the challenges that we face as a country. Whether it's seeing the differences in education that different kids are getting, right? Based on their zip code, based on the color of their skin, based on how much money their parents make. Whether it's seeing some of the elderly folks in our communities are just not taken care of. They don't have the support they need, the health care they need. Climate change, we just saw a huge report come out about the fact that we have to act more boldly in terms of fighting climate change. Working on each of those issues, I believe actually equipped me even better to sit in this seat. And the last thing I'll say in terms of background, especially when it comes to my own heritage, is I'm half Ethiopian. So my father came here, in the 70s and settled in Western New York. But my mother is a Black woman who was born and raised as far back as we know in New York. Oh. And so when you're running for office in the community that you were raised, right, you kind of have this dual experience where in some cases I walked into my school and felt very, very different. We ate different foods. My father spoke a different language, right? And then in some cases I walked in rooms where they knew my family for generations because of my mother's side. And bringing those 2 experiences together when you're talking to voters and you're talking to people, it allows you to really find your place in any room you're in, right? I can relate to the immigrant experience of feeling different, perhaps, than others, of the struggle, right? I mean, many of us, our parents, if not us ourselves, worked incredibly hard to get everything that we have, and we never take that for granted. And so I think having those 2 experiences was something really unique. And again, it might not be what, every person who's ever run for office until now, right? And let's be honest, it was a lot of white men who were running for office and, holding the highest offices. And now it looks different. Our Congress looks different. Our vice presidency looks different. And state legislatures and city councils look different. And it's because we're able to use what we have, right? And we find power in that. And I just find that just incredible because we have exponential growth here, right? We can keep building on this. And I believe that is going to shift the course of history when, again, the people in those rooms, the people making those decisions reflect us.
Obala, your experience is very different, right? I don't know if I could say recent immigrant, but you were as a refugee. Most of us did come here, maybe a student visa, maybe some of us came as refugees. But sometimes in your wildest dream, you think about running for office because you're just trying to live day by day, go to college, pay for school, buy a house, change my life, and change the trajectory of my family back in Ethiopia. So for me, your story is so inspirational that you just came, you decided, you know what, I'm not just going to go to college and do this, but I'm going to run for office and make a difference. So tell us, what is that inspiration, that fire in your belly that helps you do all these incredible things that you're doing in Minnesota?
I just want to say, Helen, thank you for this opportunity, and I want to say congratulations to the Senator and also our amazing worker here. So this is a great opportunity, and for me, 7 years ago, I was in Washington, D.C. Here, I just arrived as a kid with 1 pants and 1 shirt. So, and then we settled in Silver Spring. So the first 3 months was here, and then my social worker told me, hey, Obala, you just turned 20, and the only thing you can do now, you go find a job, because I didn't have any high school diploma. I barely speak English what I told my social worker was that when I was in a refugee camp, I heard about American Dream. I cannot get American Dream without any high school diploma and going to college. She's like, you cannot go to college because you're old. Oh. So right now I'm old, but I told her that's not what I've been told. So, and then it took me a couple of weeks, and then when we are in our 3 month, I told her I'm leaving. So I talked to my uncle in Sioux Falls, and he's like, if you want to go to high school, you cannot go to regular high school, but there's a program called Job Corps, where it's a boarding school. You stay there for a year, and then you can graduate. I'm like, really? So I took a bus from Riverdale to Silver Spring to go to the library. I get lost, and then it took me 2 hours to find a library here. So after that, I type in Job Corps. It popped up, and I'm like, boom, I'm going to Job Corps. So I didn't know what Job Corps I was going, but my uncle was like, come to Sioux Falls, and then I'll help you. The next morning, I was so happy. I went to Silver Spring to meet my case worker. I told her, do you know a program like Job Corps that I can go get my high school? She's like, yeah, but you are here with your mom. If you go to Job Corps, you'll be in for a year. You cannot come to here. Who will pay for your mom apartment? With that, you cannot go to Job Corps. And then I cry inside, and then I look at her, and I'm like, I don't know, does she really know what I'm going for? And then I walk out of our office, and then on my way back home, I met one of our young brother from Ethiopia, and he just get back from Job Corps, and he was 23. And then I asked him, you have a backpack on you. Are you from school? He's like, yeah, I just get back from Job Corps. And I pull out my paper. I'm like, is it the same? He's like, yeah. So I went home, come back the next day. I told my social worker, I'm leaving Maryland. I'm going to Midwest. And she's like, your rent, no one will pay for you. You will get a letter that you have to pay for your apartment until someone rent it. And then I told her I didn't sign for our lease. You signed for it, so I didn't sign it because I knew what will happen. So, and then we pack our thing, we moved to Sioux Falls. So it become like a big tension because the biggest thing in America as an immigrant when you move here, your social worker is your backbone. Social worker is supposed to show you the best way possible so that you can be. I moved to Sioux Falls. I went to Job Corps, 9 months. I finished my high school diploma, 24 credit, and I get my trained medical assistant, and after that I get my certified nursing assistant, and then I moved to Minnesota. And then right away I get a job at Mayo Clinic. So my 3 months in Austin, I started school at Riverland, and then the first thing I ask our community there, I'm like, who are our leaders here?
Oh, nice.
And then I asked my uncle, was like, when you said our leaders, do you mean like Ethiopian community or what leaders? I'm like, our mayor, our police, our chief of police. When I mentioned the police, he's like, are you crazy? So, and then he's like, well, we know the mayor. We met the mayor like 6 years ago. And the mayor was talking about retired like 10 years before that. So, and then I told him that we're supposed to know our leaders, our city council, who represent us, because if something happened, those are the people we go to. So I didn't have a car. I walked like, I think 1 hour and 30 minutes from my apartment to the city hall. And then I just stopped by at the city clerk. I asked her, I would like to meet the mayor. She looked at me up and down, and she's like, do you have an appointment? I'm like, no. Am I supposed to make an appointment to meet the mayor? She's like, yeah. Because, you know, growing up in a refugee camp, we never make appointment. Oh. If you want something, you just go wait there in the UNHCR until someone calls you in. So she's like, well, to meet the mayor here, you have to make an appointment and then take a week. I look at, and then I'm like, okay, can I come back next week? She's like, sure. The next week, I came in like 1 hour early, and then she asked me, do you have another appointment? I'm like, no, the same appointment. Appointment's supposed to be at 2. I show up at 1 o'clock. She's like, you're 1 hour early. I'm like, well, we have this stereotype that Africa show up late. So it was funny. And then I met the mayor 1 hour later, and then the mayor was like, did someone send you from your community? Because when I introduced myself, I'm like, my name is Obala. I moved to Austin 3 months ago. I'm a student at Riverland. I would like to get involved in the community. Is there anything from immigrant side that I can do? Because I can volunteer, I can help. I want to be part of this community because the last 3 months I feel welcome. When my mom leave here, I just want to be part of the community. The mayor said to me, this is the first time I saw a refugee come to my office to ask that. And he asked me, what come to your mind? Well, who motivated you to do that? And then I answered to the mayor was that, you know, J.F. Kennedy always said, you know, don't ask anything you can do for your country, but ask what you can do for your country. So I'm so grateful that America sponsor my visa to come here as a refugee, and now I want to give back. So that relationship, 6 months later, the mayor appointed me as a Human Rights Commission. And then in the school, I saw a thing. So I see students struggling with food insecurity. And instead of asking questions, I step in. So the biggest thing what motivates me is when I see something, I be part of that thing. If it is a solution to bring to the table, I want to be part of that solution.
Was it difficult for you to run for office? Did you get a good support system from the community? Tell us in short what that was.
Well, the biggest thing, I get pushback. Not from the city council or the people elected, because the mayor and the city council before that, they are really supportive of me because I attend the city council like regularly. So I go in and then before I ran, I just become a citizen 6 months ago.
Oh, 6 months prior to your running for office, you became a citizen.
So, and then I asked some of my friends is that, hey, the city council, the mayor been asking me to, run for office. You become a citizen now. And to me, I'm like, I'm not ready for that. And then the mayor is like, you're a citizen, you're ready for it, you go for it. So, and then the other part of my friend, I asked them, hey, can I run? And they're like, Obala, you just become a citizen. Just wait 10 years down the road, you can run. And then the other part of the community is like, you don't know about America, you don't know about anything. And after that, I'm like, I think I learned enough already history about America before I become a citizen. So, and that's what threw me in. So
that's how you became, this is just an incredible story. I mean, it's just an amazing story. And I hope it inspires a lot of young people that you do not have to have the background, the name, the recognition, the money. If your heart is in it, you can get there is the moral of your story. What I wanted to ask, and I think, even the purpose of this meeting, like I said before, what does it mean to be civic-minded, to be involved, to be engaged? So if you can tell us, as a community, what should we understand about the system in this country? In order for us to change it, we know we have to be engaged. So what does that look like? Winta.
I think everything Obala said and Samra said is jumping in. I think that to be civic-minded, I think a lot of times people, they want to have perfection. They want to say, oh, well, I have to do this first, and then I'll be prepared. You will never be prepared. It's going to be uncomfortable. But I think the story that Obala told, I remember when my mom was doing her undergraduate college degree about 10 years ago, and she had to do a project about some kind of legislation happening in our state. And during this particular time, this was probably 2011 when all of those legislations started to come across the country and in Washington about kind of anti-immigrant. And I think in my home state of Georgia, it was something like you're going to require them to have a special car. It was something nasty, something meant to hurt people. And if you recall, this is the time that Donald Trump, his whole anti-immigrant rhetoric was really getting a lot of attention. Anyway, my mom goes to the hearing and she called me, and this is what I see every day at work. And she sounded so shocked, like, Winta, why are people saying these things? Why are they communicating this way? Why do they hate us so much? And I said, Mom, they're not more intelligent than you are. In fact, you speak this many languages. You have had this lived experience. You should go run for office. And she kind of said, no, I don't think. And I'm like, no, but why? These people, well, you guys are elected officials, everybody but these guys here. A lot of times people who are elected officials, I'm sure you see among your colleagues, they don't have special skills. They don't have special intelligence. They just have the confidence, or they have a life where somebody has told them throughout life, you deserve a seat at the table, you deserve to lead the conversation. And I think really to be civic-minded is whether it is to have the courage to run for office, especially when there's nobody that looks like you or has your life experience in that space. I think that's it. But I also think it's walking 90 minutes to go talk to the mayor and say, okay, I'd like an appointment. Okay, when can I come back? When they try to shut you away, having a follow-up question, that makes people very uncomfortable. But guess what? They have to answer you. And I think one of my friends wrote a book called Right to Petition, and it basically is about how all of us have a right to petition our government. We have a right to demand, you asked politely, but we have a right to demand a meeting with the people who are representing us. And so I think it's knowing that just to have the
maybe even if you don't have the confidence, even if you have the fear, and to kind of push past the fear and say, okay, well, I'm still going to ask the question. I'm still going to say, hey, I have food insecurity, or hey, the school bus doesn't come to my neighborhood to pick my child up for school. Why is that? I would like, or hey, I would like a speed bump. You know, people drive down my street too quickly. What is the process for getting a speed bump? I see them all around town. How do I get one on my own street? I think sometimes we think about I know I personally used to put people on a pedestal when I first moved to Washington, and did not have a lot of resources, but moved here and had an internship and a part-time job to support myself. I remember I would put people on a pedestal like, oh, I can only make change if it's there. And what I've learned is that actually we're all really powerful, even as in our position as people who are paying taxes, whether you're a citizen or not, people who are paying taxes and who have the ability to say, hey, you're my representative, you're my state senator, you're my city council member, this is a problem, this is something I'm not appreciating, I need you to tell me how to change it.
How do we support elected officials like you? Let's say somebody decides to run for office, whether it's state senate, whether it's Congress or whatever. How do we as Ethiopian American be a good support system for that person?
Yeah, I love that question. I wish someone had asked me 18 months ago, or 2 years ago, I guess, when I first started. I think one thing to really remember is when in our community, for a very long time, we're going to continue to be firsts, right? There's going to be the first woman who did this, the first Ethiopian American to do this, right? We're going to keep having firsts, which means it's going to be harder. I bet you that the next time someone runs for city council, you've paved the way for them, right? They'll have you to go to say, how do I do this, right? A wise one at ripe age of 28. And I hope that people will see me in this position and feel more comfortable coming, in my footsteps. But for quite some time in the near future, we will be the first. And so one of the things that is just so powerful for us to think about as a community is the early support. So what can we do for those people who have just declared their race, right? And they're just the nobody, or they're the person that's the long shot that people aren't sure about. If we can just trust, give them the benefit of the doubt that they've got something that's worth investing in, whether it's your time or your money or even just telling friends about it, that's huge. Because you heard, I forget who said it, talk about how some people are in these positions just because we assume they've got something great to say, or we assume that they're smart just because of how they look or who their parents are. A lot of people aren't assuming those things about us. And so that early support is just so powerful. And I know that if I hadn't been able to get just that first inner circle of people to say, I want to learn more about you, I'll ask you the hard-hitting questions, but I'm saying today, I believe in you until you prove me wrong, right? As opposed to prove yourself for me to jump in. Giving that early support, whether it's a couple dollars or whether it's making some phone calls, or whether it's truly calling 3 friends to tell them about who you just saw. The power of the word of mouth is everything. The outpouring of this community when our race kind of started getting a little bit bigger, and whether it's, Instagram messages or emails or seeing myself in the news, in Ethiopia, I can't tell you the pride that you feel, and this is the hard work. I don't want to sugarcoat it for anyone. Running for office is incredibly hard work if you're doing it right. And to feel that pride and to know that there's people behind you who support you and believe in you, sometimes that's what you need to keep going in a day. And so I encourage you, even if it's not, they haven't made it on MSNBC or CNN yet, right? And they're not famous with 2 million Twitter followers. Get them when they've got 10 Twitter followers to help them get to the next level. And that's something I think uniquely our community can do to support one another. And that's the kind of power building that we need so that we can see more Congress members. I'm assuming you're going to run for Congress at some time, because you can't be this good and not. But, we'll have more of us doing this work. And I think that is something that would really be helpful.
I totally agree with that. Let's talk about the value of voting. Why voting matters and the implication that it has on people that run for office like you, Obala. Talk about that.
Well, Well, voting is very important, and for someone like me who his grandparent never voted before in a democratic election, or someone who never exercised voting, is something very important. And for immigrant, especially in this country, to become a citizen, coming as a refugee and then staying here 5 years and then apply for that citizenship, going all the right way, and then you become a citizen and then you just put that citizen, lay it down, and then you don't use it. That's where it become, it's stressful for other people who really want it to be. So I think voting is very important because whoever we are electing, they make decision for the generation of our kid, the generation that what will be next in 5 years now. Who is the mayor? What will the mayor be doing, either for infrastructure, or either is for social security at a national level, or jobs within the community, or also the safety of our community. And I think voting is very important. And one thing that I learned through my work as a college president was that in Minnesota, we do GOTV, voter registration, whereby we mobilize students, we targeted the young college student, because in America, there's this history whereby young people don't care about voting. Well, that's just what they say. That's a myth that they say. We care because as a college student, that if you don't vote, one thing I tell people is that if you don't vote, just know that your college tuition will still go high. Know that if you don't vote now, someone is voting for you to make decision and keep you where you at for the next 5 years. If you go vote, you're telling yourself and your kid that the next 5 years, I want you to be in a better position. The next 3 years, I want to have a city council who care about me, who listen to my issue, that I'm so passionate about it, so that those issues can be put on the table. So I tell this to every immigrant, is that if you have the citizen, becoming American citizen, that is the best thing you can brag about anywhere you go. Because I tell a lot of my friends is that America is the only country you will come in with nothing and be something. And if you gain that power of becoming a citizen, use it.
Use it. Yeah, absolutely right. I agree with that. Most immigrants in this country, I guess we bring our own value system, right? And most of it is conservative in many ways. A lot of the social issues that we care about are very conservative leaning. But sometimes we become very tunnel vision, and we become like either a one issue voter, and we don't really get a chance to look at candidates in their totality. Really, what do they bring to the table? Who are they? What do they believe in? And so sometimes we get pigeonholed into one issue voting block. How do we get ourselves to look beyond that and look at a person or a candidate in its totality before we decide to support them? What would you say, Dan?
Well, I think that I would encourage people to think about, so you're right, that is something a lot of us do. I think that it's important to look at what are they saying across the board, and is that in alignment with who I am as a person? So let's say that a particular politician has a point of view that is in alignment with a religious belief that I have. And I say, okay, well, I'm going to vote for this person because they believe in X and I believe in that too. Are they saying other things about people who have immigrated to this country? Do they even acknowledge that there are Africans that have immigrated to this country, much less, other groups? How are they talking about immigrants? I think that I'm at the Department of Justice now, and so I'm not in Capitol Hill, so I have to, be careful about how I answer questions. But I think the bottom line is that when people are voting, it's important to make sure that when that person is in a room advocating for things that are going to affect your life and your family's life, what are the values that they're going to be bringing to that table? Are they going to be saying things that are reflective of only one aspect of you? Because we're all very nuanced, multidimensional people, right? We don't have just one set of thoughts and that's the only thing we care about. Oftentimes you'll hear people say, well, they'll talk to particular people about only certain things. For example, they might talk to African Americans only about voting rights. Well, black people have jobs and healthcare and education. We get sick. We have to pay for childcare. Same thing with immigrants. It's not that maybe they'll be addressing the immigrant community and they'll say, well, we're going to talk to you about immigration, blah, 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 blah. Well, what about healthcare? What about student loans? What about parking tickets? There's so many things that we all have to deal with. We're not just one thing. And so I would say it's important to look at the holistic politician and make sure that you're in agreement with what it is that they represent. Because at the end of the day, when Samra and Abala are at their convenings and their meetings and their different sessions, you don't have all of your constituents in the room with you, right? You just have yourself, and you have your own thoughts and your own advocacy. And so you want to make sure that those people are people that we trust to represent what it is that we're experiencing.
Right.
As opposed to kind of one particular thing, because maybe they'll go really hard for you on that one thing, but then on everything else, they've betrayed, the community that they're representing.
So look at it in a totality.
That's right.
And so Samra, I guess, you represent a district in New York, a very diverse district in New York. And how do we get the Ethiopian American community to be interested in what you do, so that maybe you can share some lessons when you're running for office, some of the things that you've learned, where the community can come from and how they can, advance some of those issues. How could they get involved, and how do they participate even in your meetings and what you do, so they know what the decisions that you're making in your office impacts their daily life?
That's a great question, because I think it sticks with me that you just said constituents aren't in the room with me, right, when I'm making some of these sometimes tough decisions. But the truth is, I try really, really hard to make sure that the constituent voice is as strong as possible, so that it's in my head constantly running. And I have to say, some of the most powerful moments I've had this year talking to my Democratic Conference of New York Senators is when I'm sharing stories that are shared with me, right? When I'm letting them know, this is the reason I'm so passionate, because not only did I receive 250 emails, which, by the way, if you're getting 250 emails about something, that means that translates to tens of thousands of people who feel that way, and that many people actually got that email out. But not only am I getting all these messages, but I've talked to these people, I've met with these people, and the reason I'm fighting so hard for this is because this is what it means for them. This is them losing their home or not being able to get insulin for their kids. When you're able to tell those stories, that's how we change hearts and minds, sometimes of your own colleagues, to get them to do the right thing that's in the best interest of your constituents. So I do believe there's a lot of responsibility on our elected officials to make ourselves available. Most of my time this summer is spent going out in the community and talking to people, but more importantly, listening to how they feel about what I have been doing for this first few months. But I think on the flip side of that, for people in the general public, when we talk about wanting to stay in touch with whether it's your favorite candidate or your actual elected official, listen, I know that we all have busy lives, right? We all have kids, we have jobs, we want to take a vacation maybe if we're lucky, we're dealing with a lot of things. And so it usually is every 4 years we get excited about politics because there's a presidential race, and I just so happen to be running in a presidential year, so that's probably why most people paid attention, to be honest. But here's the thing, I'm running again next year, and not as many people will probably be paying attention because there's no Joe Biden on the ticket. But I encourage you to pay attention, because those are those local races that will affect your lives a lot more. When you talk about speed bumps, when you talk about potholes, when you talk about school funding in New York State, mostly comes from the state. So when you're thinking about those decisions that are affecting you and your kids, it's really local elections. And so all of that to say, I know it's easy to get excited when it's on national news and all that, but being able to stay continuously involved, even if it's not, getting up and going to rallies and writing emails and making calls, even if it's just reading what people are putting out. So one easy thing I think we all could do is most elected officials do a newsletter. Yeah. So once a month I send information out so everyone knows the things that I fought for and won, things I fought for and lost, and things that I'm going to do upcoming. And we get feedback, and people tell us, great job on this, I really didn't like that, and that's a very passive way, at least when we're in between these big election years, for people to stay in touch. And I just want to reiterate, I think it's been said a couple times, your involvement or your civic action doesn't have to be this big thing of running for office. It doesn't have to be this big thing of organizing a protest. You can literally type back to an email, good job. Or you can type back to an email, I didn't like this law. That's civic engagement. That's civic engagement. That's telling people how you feel and what you want to see. And I think often we get overwhelmed thinking that we have to do the big thing, right? We have to show up at a protest. We have to wear the t-shirt. We have to do this. Some of us do that and we do it well and we enjoy it. And others can fit in a lot less than that. And so I just would never want anyone to not get involved in some way or take action in some way because they think it's too daunting. It can be very simple. It can be one call. If you don't want to talk to someone, here's a trick. Do it at night. If you want to call the offices of your representatives, if you do it at night, you can leave a message.
Do they actually listen to the messages?
They do.
Oh.
Well, I do. I listen to every message. I can't speak for every representative, but I listen to every single message, and usually it's full every day. We listen to every voicemail. I have staff that take the calls during the day, but if that's nerve-wracking for you, I did that a few years ago when I started calling my congressperson. I would call when I knew it would go to voicemail because I was a little nervous, and then I got more comfortable. So I want us to be better at that because here's the thing. The most powerful corporations, the most powerful industries in this country, they like talking to your representatives. Yeah. They get lunch and tea with your representatives to make sure that their interests are taken into account. We have to make sure that they're taking our interests into account. So I want to make sure that every rep hears, if they're going to hear from big oil companies, they need to be hearing from the moms and dads in this room right now, because we have to make sure that people are putting our interests first.
To Samra's point, just remembering, two things. One, they definitely listen to the voicemails. They read the emails. When, we literally used to sit in a meeting and we would tell the person, the senator we're working for, well, here are the top 3 calls that you've been getting from people. And they'll say, okay, the more that there are, that shows, okay, if there are 200 people that have called, that means 10,000 people are probably impacted. Okay, maybe, that's what people respond to, right? So it is important, you have a right to petition your government. You have a right to call, you have a right to email, you have a right to ask for a meeting. And then if people don't follow up with you, then you have a right to ask for those things again. These are big fancy buildings and big fancy places, but they're for you. Right? Because we are the people that pay taxes and keep the lights on in these buildings. And then the second thing I would say is just to remember, to Samra's point about the potholes, to what Abala was saying about, asking who are our leaders, because if something goes wrong, we need to know who to talk to. If there's something you don't like, my husband and I always talk about how people drive really fast down our street. Somebody made a decision to make that a one-way street.
Yeah.
Somebody made a decision for the traffic patterns, somebody who has been elected, right, that people voted for, that's on a ballot that many of us have access to. Somebody decided to make that traffic pattern the way that it is. Somebody can decide to put a speed bump there or to make it a two-way street.
Right.
And so just remembering, to the point that I think Abala brilliantly asked when he first landed in Minnesota is, if something goes wrong, who do we contact? And saying, hey, I don't like this. And then following up on it. If you don't get a response, which you often might not, follow up on it. Set a calendar reminder for yourself. When you have a child who is asking for a toy and they're being very annoying, finally, you just give them the toy, even though you don't want to, because they're not going to go away. And so
same thing.
It's the same thing, right? It's the same principle. And so just thinking about, even if you have a fear, even if it's intimidating, that's fine. Just do it anyway.
Ultimately, I think this was probably, we miss the point sometimes. If we don't understand the way the system that this country works, how the political machine runs, we're at a disadvantage because we're going out there, we're marching on the streets, we're saying this, we're saying that, but we really are not knocking on the right doors. If you're saying it's the members of Congress that are going to be the ultimate decision makers, why are we not talking to them? Why are we not engaging them? Why don't they know our names? They don't know our community, what our interest is. If we're not doing that, just because something happens back home and we want to get up and say something, nobody's going to listen to it. We have to have a relationship, and these people need to know who they, ultimately, that's what you all are saying, right? get your voices heard. So this is our final question, so I want to get to everyone with this. Winta, let me start with you. If for young people that are interested in policy, that are interested in government, but they don't really know where to go or where to begin, you know, or it could be very intimidating for them, what advice do you have? If they like policy, if they like government, but they don't know where to start, what advice do you give them?
So I know I come from a different generation. I know the young people today approach this differently, but I will just approach you and say, hey, I'd like to work for you. And because I have no skills yet, I will do an internship, I'll work for free, and then I figure it out. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but my first internship that I had, I would work for the first half of the day, and then I would drive my car to the Gap, and I would fold shirts and jeans for the rest of the day. When I moved up here to Washington, I had a law degree. My parents were, I'm sure people know this, the tone of the Eritrean parent that has questions, saying, you have a law degree, why are you working for free? And I moved up here, and you know, all you need is one yes. You don't have to have 100 job offers. So I called every Democrat, because that's how I was affiliated, that was in a place that I had lived, and I said, can I come work for you for free, 40 hours a week? I'm very smart and pleasant, and I got 99% rejections, but I got one yes, and that's all I needed. And I got skills there that made me a suitable candidate for a paid position. But the problem is here, oftentimes, you can't get a job till you've had a job. You have to have some skills that you're bringing to the table. It's not just about how nice you are, how much education you have. And so what I would encourage people to do is to be creative. That solution that I had is not going to work for everybody, but to be creative. And if there's not, you know, if this door is locked, see if there's a side door, see if there's a window. Just, you know, try to get your foot in the door. And once you've gotten the skills after working for free, then go quickly get a job where you can be compensated for your time. So that's what I would just encourage people to do, is push past the fear. Know that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is pushing through even when you have fear. And then be creative about what it is that you envision for yourself in the civic engagement space.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Samra, so what movement, what innovation, what leaders are you following right now that's inspiring you?
Oh, so many. I find inspiration in everything. So I didn't know you were a Georgia girl, because working in Stacey Abrams' campaign in Georgia was one of those kind of aha moments for me. And that was, you know, again, you talk about not having all the answers. I had a few miles on JetBlue left, and I used my last few miles to get down to Georgia, found someone to put me up, because I couldn't afford a place to stay, and just started knocking on doors, because that's a free thing that you can do. You know, I took some time off from work and just went. And that changed my trajectory, really, because I realized that rural Georgia, by the way, is very similar to Western New York. So when you're talking about these hard-hitting issues as a progressive, and you can do it in Georgia, you can do it in New York, Western New York. And so, you know, I continue to be amazed by what she's done in Georgia and flipping the US Senate. And I think that what I love about that movement is that it beget other movements, right? Like, people now see this is a method that we can build on. This is a movement we can build. And I think it's brought a lot of attention to the threat of voting rights throughout our country. And that's something that we just heard from someone who has gotten their citizenship not too long ago, the power of being able to vote as an American citizen, right? I watched my own family members go through the process just to be able to vote in this country. And we have to face the fact that state legislatures, so my counterparts in other states all over the country, are trying to stop us, trying to stop black people, trying to stop brown people, trying to stop poor people from voting. So that is something that I'm watching incredibly closely, and it got a lot of attention again when it was around a presidential election and everyone was saying, go vote Georgia, go vote Georgia. But we have to remember that they are quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, Texas, trying to take these votes away, or these rights away, and that is going to stall our democracy. Not to be alarmist, but for people to understand, they are trying to stall our democracy, because you cannot have a democracy where huge swaths of our community can't vote
Yeah.
And we have to be very careful. So that is something that I still draw inspiration from, because I see people even locally continuing to drive that forward. And, you know, in New York specifically, we're trying to make sure that we can be even further ahead to make sure that, you know, we protect that right. And so I think we have to continue staying involved on a state level, because that's something that, unless the federal government acts, it's up to the states to protect that. And then you have to give me one little indulgence to add on to how to get involved, because I think you covered the federal side so well, but I'm here to plug your state side for people to get involved. I think another great way for young people, the first thing you should do is go online and figure out who the leaders are, right? Who are your representatives? Oftentimes, I take all sorts of interns. I give a lot of yeses, and it can be a lot easier for your state rep than for your congressional rep, you know, where it's harder to get positions. So I try to take as many interns as possible just to give them that opportunity. So I would encourage folks too, you know, all politics is local, right? So getting involved locally too is a great way to get your feet wet. And, you know, you can move up if you want to get to DC eventually, but there's a lot of work you can do locally as well.
Absolutely.
And the first internship that I got was in the state government, and it was very easy because my state senator, when I was a law student, took like 10 of us, and we got academic credit for it. So for young people, you can also get your class credits by working an internship for your city council member, for your state elected official. So I would also encourage people, just even if you have to leave a voicemail or send an email, if you're scared, just do it.
Advice. Obala, I'm going to come to you to the last question. What movement, innovation, or leaders are inspiring you right now that you want to inspire others?
That's really a great question. Before I answer that, I would like to add a little bit about being involved in civic engagement. I think the big thing that I want everyone watching and those who are here is that to be civically engaged, you don't have to be a citizen. So that's one thing that I want everyone to know. To be civically engaged, you don't have to be a citizen of America, and you can be civically engaged just by being involved in the community, you know. And when it comes to election, it's not a support of just helping us to be in the office. You know, as Senator said here, for us to be active, working, we just need that little support, you know. And the more we hear from you, the more we see you at our doors, like, hey, I'm from your district. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm seeing is not taken care of. Come knock at us, because sometimes people think that, oh, they may dream that I have this problem. No, we can't predict that. We can't predict that, you know, last night someone gets shot in the community. Last night, you know, someone get accident in that community. You have to wake up that morning and be like, today I'm going to go to the senator office and share my concern and tell him that this is what we need to do. So one thing I would repeat again, you don't have to be a citizen to be civically engaged. You can start by having that green card, by having that I-94, and just being active in your community, and start local. So, and now I will go back to the question.
Sure. Yeah, so what's inspiring you nowadays?
I think I've been watching Barack Obama when I was young, when I was in refugee camp, and Barack Obama played a big role in my life. And you know, because I see that connection, you know, Barack Obama from Kenya, and when he ran for office, I was really young in 2018, and that was exactly when we get our resettlement process, and took us another 6 years for us to come to America, another 5 years or something. So, and the one thing that I really like about Barack Obama is that if you need change is supposed to start with you. Be the change. And in this country, you know, you don't have to wait for a miracle, you know. And I always tell to myself, and if you want to change, be part of that change. Wake up in the morning and then go talk to someone, talk to your neighbor, like what is really concerning you and what I really think that we need to do to improve our life here in this community. And the most difficult thing, you know, as for immigrant, because when we move to this country, we have a lot of obstacle, you know, a lot of barriers, language, you know, we don't speak English, and then we so afraid that when we go to those offices, they have to listen to us if we speak English. No, that's not the case. Go with your broken English and tell them, this is what I need to be done in my city, they will listen, or take someone who can interpret for you and translate that for you. Because I see a lot of my peers, especially the young generation, is that when they see something related to politics, they will tell themselves that is American issue. No, we are part of this country and we are American too. We cannot continue denying ourselves that because we are not welcome in that conversation, we should stay out of the door. No, hold tight to that door until they release it so that we can be part of that table. So, and another person that really inspired me all the time is Nelson Mandela. And I watch a lot of Nelson Mandela. He's growing up as a young man, you know, and start being the change from his, you know, during one of the most difficult apartheid time. And he was being jailed. They beat him. And that's the thing that I went through as a refugee. When I was in a refugee camp, you know, life is difficult. And for me, I tell myself all the time, if I can survive in a refugee camp, nothing can stop me from surviving in America when I go up there. And the biggest role model of myself is my mom. Oh. My mom played a big role in my life. Every day I wake up, she will tell me, Obala, if I knew a little bit of English, if I knew a little bit of just how to write, either in Amharic or in Swahili, I could not be where I am today. I will be somewhere far. And I ask her, where do you think far? When you say far, where? And she's like, well, sitting at the table of the people, the important people. And then I tell my mom, you're important. So, and education play a big role in my life. And as someone who, you know, education has not been shown to him, not been shown to his parent, I see it like the only way to get me out of this struggle life is to get a better education and tell my kid that this is the only way. Get educated and no one can step on your toe.
Wow. If this doesn't motivate you, I don't know what will. Thank you for such a wonderful and engaging conversation. I really appreciate you. Samra, coming from all the way New York, from Minnesota, and from our backyard. So thank you for your time. Thank you for this wonderful discussion. And this concludes our Civic Engagement panel. Thank you, everybody. ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ የሲቪክ ኢንጌጅመንት ፓነላችን ይሄንን ይመስል ነበር። እንግዲህ በዛን ቀን ኦገስት 14 ቀን አሌክዛንደር ኔት የሚባል ሚውዚሽን በፕሮግራሙ ላይ ተገኝቶ ከሙዚቃ ስራዎቹ አሰምቶን ነበር። እስቲ ወደሱ ልሰዳችሁና የዛሬ ዝግጅታችንን በዚህ ላይ እናበቃለን። በሚቀጥለው ሳምንት ደግሞ ሌላ ፓነል ዲስከሽን ይዘንላችሁ እንቀርባለን። እስከዛው ደህና ቆዩልን። See, I don't know exactly what I ever mean to you, but I'm trying to find a way to see you through. She's saying I'll come to you, just don't fall for me, and I'll come for you, do what you want from me. Oh, I need your love, I need your love. Don't set me free now, baby, it's in my blood. Oh, running through a nigga vein now, die, it's in my lungs. I can't breathe, I can't sleep, no, no, no. I need your love. Dark times and the harder things when the river runs far from the north side of Virginia. Good God, I get either way, the only one that's gonna be my savior. See, I don't know exactly what I'll ever mean to you, I'm trying to find a way to see you through. She's saying I'll come to you, just don't fall for me, and I'll come for you, do what you want from me. Oh, I need your love, I need your love. Don't set me free now, baby, it's in my blood. Oh, running through a nigga vein now, darling, it's in my lungs. Oh Lord, I can't breathe, I can't sleep, oh no. Got a flight in the morning, around 5 in the morning. Gotta get me out of London. Been out with the man, them rolling. Been out in Camden zoning, but I know I gotta leave.
I just hope that you're there. I've been on my way. I just hope and pray. Baby, please, could you wait for me? I've been on my way. I just hope and pray that you're by your bed. I'll be there for you. You'll be there for me. And I'll come for you. Do what you want with me. Oh, I need your love. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We got CJ on the piano, Nikki on the cajon, Peter on the guitar, and we have Alex on the saxophone. Thank you. I'm Alexander Nate. Thank you guys for having me.